All right. Let's do it. All right. Wang it.
As business owners, entrepreneurs, family men, it's difficult for us to find the time to put together projects like these. Even though it's something we really want to do, unfortunately, taking care of the things we have to take care of comes first. However, because of viewer support for people like you, we're able to continue doing this. Please consider joining our Patreon and supporting the Burn and Return podcast.
We are 12 years old.
We're gonna get real winded here.
I'm stomping all over this intro, and I'm just gonna make it weird for J-Pink. J-Pink, that's me doing that.
A week
for everybody at home listening in stereo.
Covering news from the agricultural and turfgrass industries.
You're fine. You're a robot anyway, so.
Yikes! It happens.
What? Welcome to Burn and Return. Screw your intro. No one gets an intro this week because we said so. That's exactly why.
That's right.
For those of you that are tuning in for the first time, welcome aboard the Soul Train. We are three turfgrass dudes from different segments of the industry that have three wildly different businesses that come together twice a week to talk about the various things that are going on in the industry. Sometimes we just take calls from people that are out there and have questions. Sometimes we like to talk about the news, and specifically we record this on Sunday and it doesn't get released till a little bit later, but specifically on these nights, we like to talk about things that are going on in the news. And then we have a little fun segment that we call Joe Knows Turf, where we talk about some things that we find online, chronically online if you're a driver, and that means it doesn't exist in some instances, but it actually does exist, and so we just pretend like it doesn't by calling it chronically online, but then deal with the reality of it live while we're on air because we can. Like I said, my name is Matt. My handle is the Grass Factor. We have DeMay, the OSU Turf Man, and then Green Doc down below, who's Ray. And, we got Ohio, Hawaii, and Tennessee coming at you in the house. And I'll say this too, just because I'm supposed to do this more frequently than I do. If you're watching this on YouTube and you run a business and you're out there on your spray truck and you want to be hands-free, check it out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever your favorite podcast app is. We throw them up there to all of them. I think even on like iHeartRadio and all that bullshit. So if you need to be hands-free and you just want to throw it in your ears and listen to whatever it is we've got to say, because I promise you that there are some diamonds in the rough. There's going to be a lot of rough to wade through because, well, if you're a lawn care guy, you understand that 99% of this business is rough, and you need a gag. You need something to laugh at. You need a fucking turkey call in your ear every now and then. Can we get one more, JP? Yep. See, you just need one of those from time to time. And then behind the soundboard there is our amazing producer. That is J Pink. He's the one that keeps the gears greased and the mute button ready to go, just in case we have a horrifically dirty joke, or I make a comment about being a redneck, and then some liberal male calls me a racist because I refer to myself a redneck, and so we have to keep the dump button ready to go. It's happened more than once. That's all I'm going to say. It continues to happen. Be careful saying that because you sound really racist. I'm like, do I? Do I? I don't believe you. I think you're lying. I think you have an inferiority complex is what's really going on.
And by the way, Matt.
Don't be mad at me because I'm a big-ass Southern boy.
And besides that, who is actually the redneck?
Yeah, that's right. It's Ray. The Asian guy on the show is the biggest redneck of them all on here. And so it doesn't even matter. We're here to build up every stereotype you thought you had and then tear it all to shreds. We have the meth cooking chemist who produces fertilizer these days. And then we have the G-Man turned private consultant contractor in the top right corner, and then we've got Ray, the redneck Asian guy that does some really, really fucking crazy shit on residential lawns that 99.99999% of the world doesn't do. And so that's why we come together and we have a good time on here. So, like I said, this is newsworthy type of entertainment, I reckon. And so we'll go ahead and kick this off with this week's headlines.
Nothing to fear here. This is just the news.
This is just the news, and there is nothing to fear here. Just kidding. We will be covering the things that you should be afraid of, and maybe some things that'll leave you feeling a bit more optimistic, because we're going to have a little 1-2 punch here, right? So, the first part of the headlines here is that we're going to be talking about biosolids, and we're going to talk about what is seen as an improvement to biosolids, and then we're going to talk about an underlying, yet to be addressed issue with biosolids that's beginning to be talked about more and more and more and more and more. And so while we continue to put more and more lipstick in certain parts of the country on, biosolids, in other parts of the country, people are putting a high beam halogen bulb flashlight on it and trying to expose what lies within the shadows. So here's how this first one starts here. Fertilizer improvement bill emerges from committee smelling like a rose. That's funny. It's not funny. FloridaPolitics.com. That's not funny at all. Nice try there, though, Wes Wolf. I'm sure that you have
really good grades at journalism school.
I was going to say you had something just dripping off your chin at all times, but it was not. Jesus. Never mind. HB 14. Thanks, J Pink. Creates a biosolids grant program within the Department of Environmental Protection. When treating wastewater, you're left with solids and treated liquid. Call those solids what you like, but legislation passing a House subcommittee this week would encourage wastewater treatment entities to refine these solids into a better quality fertilizer. You have Class AA, A, and B biosolids, with a bill laid out to encourage more facilities to generate Class AA biosolids. Florida's Clean Waterway Act states that legislator finds that it is in the best interest of the state to minimize migration of nutrients and impair water bodies, said Kaylee Tuck. While this act has substantially strengthened permitted requirements for Class B biosolids, it does not specifically provide targeted protections for Florida's already impaired waterways. Class B biosolids have a significant amount of toxic metals and can attract rodents, flies, mosquitoes, and other organisms capable of transporting infectious agents. The state tracks land applications of Class B biosolids, but the state doesn't do the same for Class AA biosolids, which raise concerns among environmental advocates. Because Class AA biosolids are likely ending up on fields, they argue there's a need to know what effect that fertilizer is having on the water. The bill creates a biosolids grant program in the DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, which the department can provide grants to counties and municipalities to purchase or upgrade what they need in order to have facilities that can convert wastewater residuals into Class AA biosolids, along with encouraging applicants to enter public-private partnerships. HB 1405 prohibits DEP from authorizing application site permits for Class B biosolids within the sub-watershed of upstream sub-watershed of certain impaired water bodies unless the applicant can prove it wouldn't increase the nutrient load in that watershed. Lindsay Cross inquired as to whether Tuck knew of any such instances. We modeled this language after a South Florida local ordinance that was passed in 2013. Since then, we haven't seen any permits that affect or apply to this. At least 1/3 of the grant program fund would be for projects that convert wastewater into composted Class AA biosolids that meet a certain standard of full stabilization. Another third would go to projects that convert residuals into both Class AA biosolids and ammonia nitrogen solution. At least 10% of funds would go to projects in rural areas of opportunity. So, in effect, when you are producing biosolids, you're going to get different grades of biosolids, right? Depending on how much processing you want to put into it. You have just the digested bugs that are killed, and then it's just sold as basically like a compost of sorts. And then it can go through a cleaning and granulation process, which is where you're starting to get into like milorganite and stuff. And typically you'll see those as Class A exceptional quality biosolids. And now there's a Class AA where, they have to meet certain restrictions on heavy metals, right? So you have to be below certain thresholds for heavy metals in order to eat that Class AA exceptional quality biosolid, right? So in effect, they're allocating grant money to convert more of this. Then the second piece of this is that for Class B biosolids, because they are shittier than Class A and AA, is that you have to track which fields they're applied to. So what they're doing is that they're taking this a step further and saying what we're even going to do is restrict which sites can even be permitted for application of Class B biosolids unless we can prove that it would not increase the nutrient load in that sub watershed. So, good news, bad news is good news is that we are producing a better quality product that is going to be lower in overall heavy metals with Class AA biosolid production. But there is the lurking in the shadows, some other things that are going on. And we'll get to that here in a second. Boys, I want to ask you real quick, and let me ask you this. Do you think this is a positive in the first step towards shining the realities on biosolids, or are we still sweeping the big underlying problem under the rug and pretending like it doesn't exist by at least just upgrading this one facet of it until we can figure out what to do with the overall issue of it in general?
I think it's way more of column B than column A, right? I mean, there's no way, nothing in here in which people are acknowledging the not only the downstream effects, a pun not intended, but also too what's known, at least in the early and infantile stages of the contamination that these substances might have, right? So here's the thing: is like you have a lot of this stuff that Matt, right, that people are still trying to get away with. It's still a waste stream product. It still has to go somewhere. So Ray, I'm going to ask you, if it doesn't end up as some sort of fertilizer substrate, right, as like, something that gets bulked with something else, right, or become part of just a land subsurface application, what do you do with this stuff?
Very simple. You incinerate it, and then you vitrify it so that it does not stand a chance of leaching or contaminating anything, because, with biosolids, I'm thinking about what could possibly be in biosolids from the metals. And then we talked a lot about the so-called forever chemicals and pharmaceuticals that end up in biosolids that, when I was listening to Matt talk about what they're monitoring, at no time did they mention PFAS or pharmaceuticals. And that to me is actually like the elephant in the room that is not really being addressed by this particular piece of legislation, because yes, you can legislate for lead and mercury and cadmium and copper and zinc, etc. But what's typically present in biosolids and with greater frequency is PFAS and pharmaceuticals. And I think that those substances, to me, are actually more significant than, say, some lead or mercury.
What a great segue into our next article, right, Matt?
It is. And I'm going to start off this next article by saying is that the USGS, I studied this, which is the United States Geological Survey, .gov, was measuring using simulated rainfall for land-applied biosolids and the potential downstream effects on aquatic organisms. And basically, one of the things they came away with was estrogens, progestins, and androgens were seen at a markedly increased amount with samples taken 1, 8, and 35 days after biosolid applications, right? And so anyway, the point is that there is that. Now, also in the news, and this is what's really dominating the headlines, and I bring that up to say is that this is one piece that's making it into the news, but there's also another piece too. And so that is, you can check that out, usgs.gov. And then on this side, that's now making it into our news cycle pretty aggressively, because I guess from 2012, that isn't sexy anymore. The Deer Island wastewater treatment plant is a pollution success story. Over the last several decades, it transformed Boston Harbor from a nationally embarrassing cesspool into a swimmable bay. The treatment plant takes everything the people of the greater Boston send down their sinks, toilets, showers, washing machines, plus industrial waste, and treats it. The treated water is clean enough to let out into the ocean. The remaining sludge gets recycled into fertilizer that's used in nearly 20 states. But now that fertilizer is raising fresh concerns. Oh, boy, the puns in this are just awful. That's because the wastewater treatment plants like Deer Island were not built to handle the toxic forever chemicals known as PFAS. The treatment process concentrates PFAS chemicals in the sludge and therefore in the fertilizer, leading environmentalists and public health advocates to call for an immediate end to its use. Others are not so sure that a full ban on sludge-based fertilizer or biosolids is the answer, but there is a widespread agreement that we have only begun to grasp the extent of the problem. I think we're only starting to discover how important biosolids are as a source of PFAS contamination. And this is from Heidi Pickard, who is a Harvard doctoral student who is analyzing soil and corn from farms contaminated by sludge-based fertilizer. Most states have not even begun to test to see if biosolids that have been applied to land are contaminated or if that soil is contaminated. I think if they go and look, they're going to discover that is a huge contamination issue everywhere. 43 communities, about a third of the people in Massachusetts, send their wastewater to Deer Island. Industrial and household waste, stormwater, the liquid that leaks from landfills, and the slop pumped out of septic tanks, it's all tunneled to the plant with its iconic egg-shaped tanks. On average, the plant receives and treats more than 330 million gallons of wastewater each day, making it the second largest treatment plant in the country by volume. Because thousands of consumers of industrial products, from waterproof cosmetics to toilet paper to firefighting foam, contain PFAS, the wastewater coming into Deer Island, like wastewater everywhere, is contaminated with these chemicals. What gets into wastewater is just about everything that we use in our society because it's the pollution sink for what's out there, which is a big deal when we're talking about PFAS. So, I'm going to shorten this to say that you can go through and read it yourself, but I'm going to shorten this to say is that when you are doing your wastewater treatment facility, right, you are the highest volume of ingredients that are coming through there is just going to be water, right? And there's going to be various things that are either suspended or dissolved in this water. And through the treatment process, you're removing those things. Since it's all diluted through water as its carrier, you are effectively concentrating everything else that's in it, right? Whether it be heavy metals, whether it be hormones, whether it be PFAS, all of that is going through a concentration process as it's extracted from the water so the water can be recycled and reused or pumped into the ocean, whatever it needs to be, as long as it meets that classification, once it leaves the wastewater treatment facility. So what's happening now is that the light is beginning to shine on the fact that PFAS are coming out of wastewater treatment facilities, not in the wastewater, so to speak, but it's actually in the biosolids that are coming from it. And then those biosolids are then spread on the fields that grow everything from animal feed to our feed to whatever the case may be. And then that in turn gets recycled back into the population where we're eating animals that have consumed this and so on and so forth. And, where does it end? Where does it begin? And how do you go about fighting it? The point is that, here, it looks like Boston is saying that they are ready to do whatever it takes. But the point is that no one is really sure what it's going to take yet. There have been a couple different processes that have been developed as far as treating it, but as far as implementing them at scale with reliability, with cost feasibility, has not been able to be done yet. So that is the positive news on the horizon. And I'm curious, what's y'all's take on this? And then more so, are you hearing anything locally yet? I'll say this, what I'm hearing locally is crickets.
Same. Sure. Same here. And I think it's going to be that whole thing where it'll get a ton of play on the coasts, right? East and west and middle of the country. You're not going to hear a whole lot about it until, it was recent that EPA proposed new rules for drinking water standards, right? To have PFAS limits on that, like almost lower than what's detectable currently, right? With the technology and the machinery we have for that. So that all being said, it's the whole velocity of change argument thing. What do we do with this stuff? For years and years and years, we've just pumped it back into, either, fertilizer blenders. We've put it in, with in-ground applications. We've done a variety of different things with it, bulked it with compost, right? To get rid of it. And it's been a suitable source because it's, as long as you can control for the heavy metals and, meet the EPA standards as far as those goes, or those elements go, then, you're fine. There's so much more that we don't know, and how quickly that changes. I think it's going to be, I'll tell you what, folks, I think what's going to really be interesting is, where the EPA drives it on this, because, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I mean, this isn't a good idea, as far as having no standards around this when we know it's a problem. And that's not what I'm advocating for. I don't think anybody on this panel is going to sit here and say that, hey, we should just continue to use this stuff willy-nilly. I think we've all been pretty ardent in our support of saying, folks, hey, just don't use this stuff anymore. Don't put it in your programs, especially if you're in the lawn care side of things. But we know that it's still happening. And, as far as what you do with it and how you do with it, I think you have to vote with your wallet. So if there's anything I can say for the people that listen to this show is, just plan on it not being there, right? You've got other choices out there in the marketplace that are just fine. They're going to still provide you the same level of turf performance and anything else that you can imagine that this is doing for you. I think the only thing that you might not like a little bit different is the price point. It might go up a little bit in price in terms of your price per bag, but to not have this in there and not have it, the rug pulled out from under you at some point in the future, probably worth it. There you go. Time's up. It's over. What do you think, Ray?
Yeah, and PFAS is just one thing, but again, where are the standards for the various pharmaceuticals? Because let me think about the persistent pharmaceuticals like the fluorinated antibiotics, the fluorinated psychotropics such as fluoxetine, and then what do we think about the highly stable and bioavailable hormones like the orally available progestins and estrogens? Because when your lady takes her birth control pill, guess what happens when she goes to the bathroom? Guess what happens?
Urinalizing it.
Yeah. It's all going back out into this biosolid waste stream. And the thing that keeps on coming up in the news is how over the last, I want to say 50 years, they say that men's hormone levels have been changing, and not necessarily in the positive way. And this just so happens to coincide with the rise of the readily available and commonly employed female birth control, which is orally available estrogens and progestins. And so I have to wonder now, are those pills or the contents of those pills somehow getting back to us? I mean, are they somehow circulating back to us? And, when I say the dose makes the poison, Matt, I also think about length of exposure as a component of that dose. In other words,
sure,
you're fine if you're exposed to a little bit of this extremely occasionally. However, what happens if you are exposed to an otherwise small quantity daily and maybe even several times a day? What happens then? Right? I mean, that's different. So I think we need to just look at exactly what's in a ton of even that so-called Class AA biosolids. What's in it? It checks off for lead, checks off for mercury, checks off for cadmium. Cool. But then, come on, what else is in it that has a potential health effect? I mean, let's be a little more, I guess, thoughtful and mindful, and not just look at one thing, but then not look at the other things that could potentially have a negative effect.
Yeah.
Without
a doubt.
Yeah,
I was just going to say that until at some point this is going to have to be addressed in more ways than one, right? And we've said it before, and the easy thing that you can do is go to your fertilizer supplier, and if they are pitching you biosolids, ask to see a PFAS report on the biosolids that are in the bags that you're selling you, right? That is the easiest, quickest thing you can do. And then if, again, correlation does not equal causation, but it does, I think it warrants discussion. And I think it warrants someone to study and give you a real answer, is that if you look at testosterone levels from the 1930s to now, taken into account the same ages, it's crazy. And then if you also look at infertility rates among men from that same age span, it is a very, very sharp decline that's taken place, and that's a problem. And what is causing that problem? I don't know. And is it biosolids? I have no idea. This is so far outside of my wheelhouse. I have no idea. But the point is that if we know it's being passed on in biosolids, again, USGS is one who conducted that. So this is a government agency that is doing this, and published it in 2012. Then who knows at that point? Can we not get testing to be able to say that whether it's enough to influence men's health and women's health or not? Because infertility and malaise and everything that goes along with whacked out hormone levels is a big bad. That's not a little bit bad. That's big bad.
Matt, and there's one more little thing to make note of, is that in the last 50 years, girls have been going into puberty earlier,
which is
than previously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you see when a young lady goes into puberty, that is, to me, the surge of estrogens and progestins, kicking in. Whereas for the boys, the opposite happens, either delayed or non-existent. And so there is something going on that is not exactly studied. And this has large effects on, I guess, the survival of the human race, even, because you have girls that are going to puberty at age 12, but then or sooner, but then you have the boys that never go into puberty. I mean, my goodness, how are we going to maintain human population at that point?
Oh, come on, Ray. We all know that children are a bane on the climate, and everyone should stop having children. Anyway, we'll go ahead and move on. That is my signal for shut the fuck up, Matt. You're going to get us banned. A $1 billion Richland fertilizer plant will need the power of 132,000 homes. Where will it come from? How about this? Let's give you a big, giant blank answer of, well, somewhere. Because that's exactly the information that Atlas Agro shared with the Economic Development Plan in Richland, Washington, when they were talking about building their 100% green, carbon emission-free ammonization plant. And so basically what these folks do is legitimately pretty cool. I was looking up their process here. I've got it. And so they claim that they're going to use renewable energy production. Part of it is going to go towards the electrolysis of water, right? So when you put water through electrolysis, you are splitting the H2O molecule, right, into hydrogen gas and oxygen. The excess of renewable energy production, they're going to sell back to the public grid. But if we know they need the power of 132,000 homes, where's that energy going to come from? It's probably not all going to come from renewable energy. I promise you that. We're talking about lots and lots and lots of megawatts that we are not getting from renewable energy right now. So we'll just go ahead and mark that part out as probably not accurate. But the electrolysis of water to hydrogen is accurate, right? Then it's going to go from there, and the hydrogen is going to join forces with an air separation unit, right? So if we think about what makes up our atmosphere, we have nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon dioxide, and the majority of the air we breathe is made up of nitrogen, interestingly, right? Well, ammonia is NH3, meaning nitrogen and hydrogen, right? One molecule of one atom of nitrogen and three atoms of hydrogen. So you take those two and then you combine them in an ammonia plant, right? Well, that's a pretty energy intensive process. Not too far from good old Haber-Bosch there that we're dealing with. And so then you have ammonia, which is going to go to a nitric acid plant, right? So ammonia is NH3, but nitric acid is HNO3, right? So basically we're going to tie some oxygen back into there and oxidize that ammonia back to a nitric acid and combine that with ammonia. And ammonia plus nitric acid is an acid-base reaction, and the product of that, the byproduct of that, the product of that acid-base reaction is ammonium nitrate. So that is how they plan on doing that. But again, the question is how in the fuck are we going to power this damn thing? This is a $1.1 billion project, and it needs 350 megawatts, which is enough to power the city, the entire city, 3 times over. And what they said is that, yeah, we got some real cool ideas on how we're going to do that. One of them is going to be an X-energy advanced reactor at the end of the decade. Who? X-energy. Well, it's an advanced. It's going to be cool. It's a nuclear reactor, and it's really cool, and it's going to be targeted, and it's going to be able to help us with this. Okay, yeah, that's what they're saying at the end of the decade. So we're 2023. That's the end of the decade. I don't know. Wow. It sounds like up until then, they're going to have to be buying power, right? So they're going to be purchasing power on the open market, and then because you are using you're using such a high amount of energy, they're going to be paying a pretty expensive premium on this. How this works out financially is beyond I could ever figure out. But they did get a pretty sweet deal on their 150 acres and then the 260 acres with the port and all that. So maybe, and then they got rail cars, rail access too. And, of course, they're going to bring 1,000 jobs, which is always a big plus. But again, it sounds like this thing is going to be in for a monumental loss over the next 10 years. And then as soon as they can get tied over to nuclear, then they'll be able to turn a profit of sorts, right? Or they're just going to produce fertilizer that's going to be so expensive that it's going to be extremely difficult to sell. So I don't know how this is going to work out, but it should be interesting, to say the least.
Yeah. I mean,
go ahead.
Okay, my question is there ever going to be another nuclear plant? Because that's in Washington, right, Matt?
Yes, and apparently there are nuclear plants in Washington operating right now.
There are, but then getting a new one online, good luck, because you see, all those previous plants were basically legacy plants from Hanford. And if you talk to somebody from Washington, Oregon, or Idaho about Hanford, it's as if you said a dirty word. Because Hanford was the original nuclear site that supplied the Manhattan Project. And for those of you that don't know, the Manhattan Project was the race to create the first nuclear weapon. So it's kind of a sensitive subject. And of course, my other question is, barring the getting power from a nuclear plant, where the hell are we going to get that much electricity from. Because this process that these people are talking about is a far departure from the old Haber-Bosch process, because I'm also familiar with an alternate means of making nitric acid. And do you know what that alternate means is, Matt?
What's that?
You pass atmospheric air through a high voltage plasma, and that high voltage plasma then forces the nitrogen and the oxygen to combine in the air to form what's called NO2, and that NO2 is then reacted with water to create your nitric acid as fast as you can bubble air through the water. However, that process needs a shit ton of electricity, because you're essentially pushing air through a high voltage arc.
Yeah. And this is probably what they're doing, right? And that's probably why they need the here's the deal, is that the nuclear reactor out there right now caps large users at 10 megawatts because they're running out of capacity. And these people need 350 megawatts. That's 35x what is available from the nuclear reactor as a large user. And it's capped at 10, right? And they're 35x that. So I don't know how this ends up being brought to fruition, but boy, I can't wait to keep an eye on this because it should be a doozy. All that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive on into what DeMay, take us into this week's, the deal.
Joe knows turf.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Joe. I'm gonna give you
nice to meet you.
A bunch of accurate turf facts today because Joe knows turf.
Well, for those of you that don't get to see Matt in his full glory in our after shows, and again, the only way to see that is by accessing our Patreon, www.patreon.com/Burn-and-Return. And in our after shows, one of my very favorite things to do is to really put a gauge and try to calibrate my mind around what max level of anxiety is. And I want to backstop that all by saying that in many of these cases where there's an anxiety-riddled episode from Matt, a lot of times it's not because he hates these people, it's because actually he loves these people, wants to help them. And I think that will probably be the case here. And I did also want to throw a shout out to our friends at Acme Mowing. I don't know if they're our friends or not. I'm just gonna say friends. I have no problem with them, no beef. But we did put up their video about the whole mixing and loading thing here a couple weeks back on our most recent Burn and Return episode. They took that video down and they responded in kind, saying that they've kind of cleaned up some of their practices and some other things. So hopefully,
and it happens. Look, I am preaching to the choir here. A lot of times, why this shit makes me mad is because I've made these mistakes. Learn from my mistakes. Okay. I've done more. I told the story of shitting myself after taking Simazine right to the fucking grill at 160 psi.
So listen, I want to say a few things here. One, we've had people that we have called out, if you want to use that term, on our show before. Had great conversations with them, built good relationship with them. There's at least 7, 8, maybe 9 of them that I can think about in the 2-year history of this show that we've called on here. And the second thing I'll say is that if we're saying something or anything like that, it's because we love this industry. We love everything it's given us. We're grateful for it. And if anything else, we want to see it, go the right direction. Okay. So if you don't like it, if you don't like some criticism, sorry, but that's what we're here to do. Okay. And we're not above it either. We've fucked up a lot of shit. So with that being said, Matt, the goal in this whole, this episode of Joe Knows Turf is I would like you to just sit and watch this video in its entirety. Okay. Mm-hmm. And we'll watch it too. Some of us have seen it. Some of us hasn't. And I will kind of stop a couple of times along the way, but I don't want you to say anything. I just want you to keep a tally mark, of things that you're just like nails on the chalkboard. It really bugs the shit out of you, and then we'll talk about it when it's all said and done. I just want to stop every now and again to give our audio-only users or listeners a set the scene kind of moment, okay? So let's go ahead and start that video, J Pink, and you keep the tally marks going here. All right, we are looking at, this is the Lawn Barber Lawn and Landscaping LLC, his YouTube channel, and the title of this video is, What is Aeration, and Why Should You Request This Service, ? All right, let's see what the Lawn Barber has to say.
So aeration, what is it? What is aeration? What's everybody crazy about it for? At least the people that know about it. Well, aeration needs to be done in the springtime. It needs to be done when it's about 60, 70 degrees. I mean, you can do it when it's 50. So you can also throw an application down to whatever your yard may need. So this yard here, I mean, it's got a lot of clover. It's got a pretty full, healthy grass in the back because it holds a lot of water in the backyard. In the front yard as well. It's looking good. Just need a little bit of weed control. But aeration is one of those things where you have this machine over here, obviously, with the spoons on it, and it digs holes in the ground, or should I say, not digs, punctures little holes in the ground. So what it does is it gives the lawn respiration so that it can breathe and the roots can get its nutrients, because when the soil is very compacted, the grass don't grow. A lot of people don't understand that because they're not educated, and that's why I'm here explaining. So it's like if you put yourself in a room with no oxygen, you can't breathe, right? So I mean, it's the same thing with the grass. You got to open it up. So I guess you could say the dirt would be kind of like the lungs for the grass, so its roots can just fully breathe. So but yeah,
Pause.
We're gonna get
no. All right, let it go.
So listen, I just want to set the stage for our audio only people here. All right, so our friend here, I don't know his name, is at a house. It would appear that he has not been there before. This lawn is hit. It is in rough shape. There's not a whole lot of desirable vegetation there. Quite a bit of weeds. It's a nice, just looks like a 4 or 5 year old house, newer neighborhood. Got a Benz C-Class sitting out the driveway, but the lawn looks more like a Prius that needs a new set of batteries from 20 years ago. It's pretty rough. All right, let's go on here.
Get an application down. I'm here to put down some bonus S, some pretty good stuff. It's a weed and feed. I've used it before in another video in my personal home, so check it out.
All right, so now we're aerating the lawn, aerating the back lawn. The back lawn looks comparatively worse than the front. The front's not good. Okay, so we're aerating the lawn. All right, that's where we're at. Matt, keep living, stay alive with us. Don't die on me. Bearing down on the thing. All right, still aerating the lawn. Going over it twice, it looks like. Perpendicular direction. Really getting after it here in the back lawn. A lot of clover.
So I'm going to show you. You can see the plugs. They come up out of the ground. Some of them are kind of plugs, some are kind of dirt. There's a plug.
I think that is centipede.
So we created many holes in the ground here so that, get it ready for an application of weed and feed, something along those lines. So let me go a little detail about what is aeration. All right, so we got the bonus S, Southern Weed and Feed. We're gonna break it out in get it ready in one of those spreaders over there. I think I might use...
Okay, so setting the stage here, we're getting ready to put some weed and feed out, and what is shown here on the driveway would be a big box store version of a Scott's drop spreader and a Scott's big box version of a rotary or broadcast spreader. All right, go ahead and play it.
My edge guard, because this one, typically the Turf Builder Classic drop, usually for like really big properties, and this property is probably around 1/4 acre, so this would be ideal. And we have enough product where we could probably fill it up to probably not even halfway, probably 1/4 of the way, and get through this whole yard. And this one has an edge guard on it, so it won't shoot in the flower beds. And yeah, the flower beds over here looking a little rough. I like to shoot it in there, the product, but I don't want to take a chance on killing the plants. So let's just focus on the grass. That's what he asked me to do here at his house. Just focus on the grass. Now we could probably throw it in there because there's no flowers in there. We can just throw the weed and feed everywhere, so yeah. So the last thing you gotta do is water it. This is very important so that the lawn...
Pause. I do have to say this at this juncture real quick. So he's fertilized the one side of the house, gone into some of the flower beds that don't have any desirable plant material in them. Now a couple of times, yeah, a couple of times. And also, can you back up just a second, J Pink? Like go back 10 seconds and play this, and then stop it one more time for me. Okay, wait.
So the last thing you gotta do is water it. This is very important.
Pause. Now listen, when we first watched this, I swore to God that this guy was just taking a whiz on the lawn. And I'm not saying it to make fun of him, but that's just where my mind went, okay? I just have to say that. I'm not into water sports. I'm not into the yellow discipline, but that's just where it went, okay? I got to say that. All right. He is actually using a hose. So let's go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
So that the lawn and the soil absorbs this. And by doing that, you wet it. Don't saturate it. Just get it moist. Just enough to where it's absorbing into the ground. So yeah, if you like this video, make sure you like, subscribe, follow whatever platform this video is on. And thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. See you in the next one. Take care. God bless.
Okay. Matt, where do you want to start? And if you wanted to back up at any point and rewatch, how many did you have?
I was doing a good job of taking notes here from starting off. And then the last thing I wrote was "too past?" ? And after that, it just devolved so rapidly. I was confused. Okay. First things first. The first thing I wrote was just some notes that he said was aeration, and I'm always, and this is me playing semantics, and I'll be very transparent about that. He said a lawn needs an aeration. Okay, yeah, I disagree. Then the second thing is going to be that a lawn needs aeration at a certain temperature. All right, that's also going to be a hard disagree. There's a lot of nuance there that is being wildly overlooked because again, it is so variable that it's an impossible thing to state. Then of course, aeration punctures holes, has spoons, and increases respiration. Again, playing semantics here. Respiration through aerification.
No.
Who DeMay, give me a 10-second explanation of what respiration is.
Respiration is how a plant consumes the sugars that are stored in the roots to produce energy.
Okay, so anyway, it does not apply in this scenario via hole puncturing in the ground. And then we started to go on to say that grass don't grow because the ground is hard, and that it is.
Time's up. It's over.
That's a stretch. Grass don't get oxygen, won't grow was the next note I took, and I might be paraphrasing what he said, but he did say that, and then he correlated it to like if humans don't get oxygen, then we die, which is the same thing as like grass not getting oxygen and then it dies because they're not photosynthetic or anything. And then dirt in turn is like lungs for the grass, and so it gives the roots the ability to breathe. I don't know what any of that means, but I could promise you that none of it is even remotely true. And I get, like any good grass guy, you always try to come up with an analogy of how to explain things, and this is probably the worst case scenario of coming up with an analogy that I've heard in a really, really long time. I promise, if you're teaching a continuing education class and you pull out something like that, everyone's going to get out and walk out, and then your local Department of Agriculture is going to cancel your ass, and then you'll be scratching your head like, damn, I fucked that one up, didn't I? The second thing I noticed was it was that his aeration quality in and of itself was not good. That I would not feel like a service provider doing that kind of aeration and leaving a bill for it, right? Like if I bill them $50, then maybe I would be okay with that type of aeration, but I would never sell an aeration at $50, and I just wouldn't do one at that caliber. It's just not good. That is not a good aeration. Okay, I digress. Then the second thing is that I don't know why he displayed a drop spreader and a broadcast spreader. I guess the drop spreader was for the hill strip, was his purpose of showing that you could be more precise with applications on the hill strip, I'm guessing. But then, touts the edge guard, which would bypass that, I guess, to an extent. If you are a wizard with an edge guard, then you know how to do the hell strip with it. And sometimes you got to tilt it to one side and do it in reverse, but you can actually get it done without getting it on the concrete if you've got a little bit of experience. And the other thing that stuck out to me too was that it said the lawn is probably a quarter of an acre. A quarter of an acre, a 43,000 square foot. Can you go back to the backyard there, JP? An acre is 43,500 square feet, just to play for fun. Is this 10,000 square foot of grass? I don't know. Very well could be, because the camera plays all kinds of camera tricks, right? So it's hard to say. But that is one of those things.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I didn't either. I didn't either. Maybe 6,000 square feet is what I was kind of envisioning.
I'm thinking like 5.
Yeah, this is not a big yard, right? And I'm being gracious at 6,000 square feet. So if I'm gonna do some quick math here, because I like actually putting legitimate values to this. So if we took 43,500 and divided it by, we'll say 6, just to be gracious, that is not a quarter of an acre. That is 1/7 and a quarter of an acre. So it is imperative to have a pretty damn good idea of your turf area you're applying there, and not just, well, I guess it's a quarter. And so Michael Chaley says 8 feet between the fence posts. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 56 feet by 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll say 7 by 7, 56 by 56. So we're at 3,000 square foot in the back. We'll call it 2,000 in the front, just for funsies. So yes, Ray, probably 5,100 square feet is what we're looking at.
About 5,000. Yep.
Okay. So then he said he wanted to shoot the Scott's Bonus S into the flower beds, and I'm going to get into the active ingredients of Bonus S here in a minute. And that in and of itself is bad. You probably should not be doing that to begin with, especially when you're applying a post-emergent weed control with a weed and feed type product. And then to further demonstrate how much of a bad idea it was, we saw on the side of the house, because it was exceptionally weedy, he said, fuck it, I'm going to fuck around and find out. And I'm going to take this Scott's bonus ass, and I'm going to make one pass down the edge. I'm going to make one pass along the side of the house into the flower bed. I'm going to make one pass in the middle, and then I'm going to repeat it for a second time. And based on the throwing pattern of that, it probably should have been one pass down the edge and one pass down the other. So, we could be somewhere in the 3 to 4x rate category along just that side of the house. Now, why is that inherently bad? Well, Scott's bonus S used to be, back in the day, metsulfuron methyl, and due to a multi-million-dollar lawsuit that Scott's had to pay out there, they pulled out the metsulfuron methyl and put in atrazine, because that one's a lot more fun than metsulfuron methyl. Well, kinda, not really. And for those of you that have ever applied atrazine, chances are you have probably fucked up something more than once. Because if you start applying it to things that are green, you're going to see negative consequences. The caveat to that is that you have some leeway with some centipede grass and some St. Augustine grass, and then depending on the time of year, you can get away with it on some zoysia too, right? So, but it did, and I was really nervous when he did zoom in on this at one point. I think I identified this as centipede grass, and then gauging by his southern accent, I'd say he's in South Georgia. It's just my wild ass guess. South Carolina, okay. Area. Charleston area, definitely a centipede lawn there. So, at least that. Now, I will say this, is that atrazine is one of those ones, man, if I'm using it and I'm putting it in a video, and this is coming as someone, as a seasoned guy that's been around, I would fucking mark that up with every possible warning that, look, do not apply this to your tall fescue. Do not apply this to your Bermuda grass unless you really, really, really know what you're doing. So my warning is that just don't use it at all, period, unless you have centipede grass or St. Augustine grass. And that would be the only time. And in fact, if it's coming in a pre-formulation like this bonus S right here, you shouldn't be using it anyway, period. Because chances are, if you're having to opt to use this, you probably don't have the experience required to handle a product like atrazine, okay? Just because the risk to reward ratio is probably not working out in your favor. Overall anxiety inducing, I'm going to say this is about a 9.2 out of 10. At one point, my armpits were cold because of the rapid formation of sweat on it and the amount of actual respiration that was, or perspiration that was occurring there. I guess I could call my sweat respiration in this particular instance, as it was evaporating rapidly off of my skin and actually making my armpits cold. Man, this guy needs a lot of fucking help. And
tons.
I don't know where the beginning of this is, because this was done with such a high degree of confidence. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm guessing that this guy is 80% so confident in what he was doing that he does not want help. Maybe I'm wrong, and I would love to be proven wrong on this, but that is just my.
This is my guess.
Thing. Yeah. And I forgot about this picture right here, where he's pouring it on the curb, atrazine, impregnated fertilizer.
It's rough.
On the really on the road. Let's be honest. From the side of the bag. What is that?
Yeah.
You cut a hole in the side of it, and you're just going to side
broken up.
Pour
go back to where it's at. Go back into the.
Yeah, it's in another bag.
Yeah, it's
a broken bag, and here's my thought on this guy. This guy does this all the time. Because Matt, I had a chance to watch this previously.
Yeah.
And for me, this rated 10 out of 10 on the cringe factor. And do you know why it rated 10 out of 10 on the cringe factor?
This?
That, and then the 3 passes on the side of the house, because
it's tough.
True story, Matt. Back in the 1990s, I had a job where I had to render about 2 or 3 acres of land dirt. And do you know how I got that done back in those days?
Was atrazine a component of it?
Okay. 5 pounds atrazine 90DF, quart of glyphosate, quart of 2,4-D. Aloha weeds. And nothing grew there for the next year.
Yikes.
Just saying.
Yeah. Listen,
I'm trying to be tame.
People are gonna.
I really
people
am.
I can tell. I can tell that you're very reserved, and that had this not been, for public consumption, that it'd be far different. But here's the thing: I want folks to understand is that, it is a choice to approach your job with professionalism. It truly is. You can't use the shucks, I didn't know. And I'll say this too: is we were all beginners, and the reason that we're sitting up here is because we've made tons of mistakes, and because I'll be dead honest, right? And people have approached us about this and said this, man, you guys could be a little more gentle. You could be, you could be this, you could be that. If I read an email, if Matt tries to call somebody and leaves them a voicemail, if Ray sends a strongly worded letter in the mail, do you think it has any sort of effect whatsoever? And I'm not saying that because we're calling them out publicly, because we move the needle or some shit. It has nothing to do with that. I'm just trying to get attention to this is something else that somebody else is probably going through, some other growth stage that they're at in their business, not just this guy, but many other people. And hopefully one person will watch this and be like, ooh, I got to stop doing that right there.
Mm-hmm.
And if that happens, we've done our job. So, Lawn Barber, listen, dude, you want to come on the show? Would love to have you. If you don't ever see this, well, sorry. But I hope that the point of this was, one, to point out that, man, there's a lot going on there and a lot that could be better. Number two, that professionalism is a choice and that it will be a slow process to get there, and it will be filled with mistakes, but it will also be filled with you finding the right resources to get yourself better in a hurry. And finally, the last part was simply to just watch Matt sit there and fucking cook under the microscope for about 6 minutes.
And I'm trying to be nice. And
you're red in the face right now.
Why are we applying a 29010 to 90% dormant centipede to begin with? It just at a bag yard kind of rate, right? I mean, that's, to me.
I know why. I know exactly why.
Because you can buy it at a 5,000 or 10,000 square foot bag. I did not know that, by the way. That's
yes, you
funny.
can. Yes, you can, Matt. And here's the thing: is
I guess that was a 10,000 square foot bag, since this is about a quarter of an acre. Yep. On a 5,000 square foot yard that we were able to deduce based on the posts.
Yeah.
Can atrazine neutralize PFAS?
No, in fact. Here's the thing that's making me really cringe is that right now, atrazine period is in the crosshairs.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Atrazine
very much.
Atrazine in and of itself. I mean, because, for example, here in Hawaii, back in 2005 or 2006, they found atrazine in groundwater. Guess what happened? It's no longer in Hawaii. Okay. And then nationally, they find atrazine in various waterways. And right now, atrazine is scapegoated regarding certain biological effects on various aquatic life forms, right? It's being scapegoated. So I don't know how much of this is true, because for me, hey, if atrazine did that to the frogs, then, all of those people for whom he wants to be a she, we could just give them an atrazine pill.
Oh boy.
And be done with it.
Dump. Look, seriously, if you have a lawn business and what you do looks like what we just watched, please send us an email. Go to thegrassfactor.tv. There's a contact form there. Contact us, and we will help you to no longer look like this, right? And it's not the presentation of it that was poor. The presentation of it looked fine, but to a trained eye, and more importantly, to your local state's Department of Agriculture, if they roll up on you doing this, you will be fined to holy fucking hell and back. And if you don't have the appropriate insurance, if you don't have the appropriate bond, that is going to fall on you personally. Your LLC be damned. They will come after you as the applicator, not your LLC. So get ready, because you're going to be shelling out some bucks, and your career path will be shuttled instantaneously towards, out there in outer space, which is not the good kind of outer space you want to be in. It's not hockey stick growth. It's downward. You might end up at the center of the universe on that one, as a pile of molten goo. Anyway, again, reach out to us at grassfactor.tv, whether it's the lawn barber or anybody else that is concerned that they're operating this way, and let us help you. Because again, any mistake that you see out there, chances are we've done it. I can't say I've ever done this, but I can at least recognize the what's not supposed to happen here. Gentlemen, let's check out this week's shit. Did we skip the burns? We did. We need to do the burns. Whoops. Yes. Yeah, Sheila, I got real ahead of myself there. I guess it was the prelude just warning me that it was coming. I don't know. This is interesting, right? Because it's not super common to see this in the headline, and it starts like this: Bayer sues Missouri farmers. If anybody's read anything in the news lately, it is so-and-so sues Bayer glyphosate. So-and-so sues Bayer glyphosate dicamba. So-and-so sues Bayer. Bayer loses lawsuit. That is typically what dominates the headlines. But if you missed it, let me repeat that. Bayer sues 4 Missouri farmers for illegally spraying dicamba, saving and replanting seeds from the company's genetically engineered crops. Well, if you caught the second piece of that, that is a giant no-no. Ask Central America. Bayer is suing 4 farmers in the Boot Heel of Missouri for illegally spraying older versions of dicamba on its genetically engineered soybeans, as well as doing so after the state's cutoff date for spraying the herbicide. The lawsuits filed in January in federal court in the Eastern District of Missouri allege that the farmers are in violation of their user agreements with Bayer and have harmed the company's reputation with the EPA. Bayer alleges the farmers also saved seeds from Bayer's dicamba-tolerant crops and replanted them, a violation of their user agreement. During the course of the investigation into saving seeds, Bayer said it found evidence of farmers illegally spraying older versions of dicamba, which are legal to buy but can't be used on the crops. The lawsuit also charges the farmers with patent infringement, breach of contract, tortious interference with business expectancies, and negligence. Critics say the lawsuits are an attempt by Bayer to blame the older version of the weed killer for damage caused by widespread legal use of dicamba on crops. Millions of acres of farmland and natural areas have been harmed by dicamba moving off where it was applied since genetically engineered dicamba-tolerant crops were introduced in 2015. Because of the damage, a federal court banned dicamba briefly in 2020, but the EPA reapproved dicamba with additional restrictions a month later. That approval is currently being challenged. Then they were saving seeds and illegally spraying dicamba. So these 4 guys: Mark Hodel with roughly 500 acres, Greg Duffy 1,000 to 1,600 acres, Caleb Duffy up to 700 acres, and Brian Arians of Arians Farms, who had 2,500 to 3,600 acres. Those are going to be some big ass Smurfing lawsuits. Mm-hmm. And I just want to put that out there is that look. This is the situation Bayer's in, right? Monsanto has a reputation that if you save any of their genetically engineered seeds or harvest any kind of genetically engineered seeds, you are absolutely foodbarred. And it has been a big, big to-do in Central America. And that is really what got Monsanto in the news originally over this most recent thing. Then if you then became the glyphosate thing, of course, right? Bayer purchased Monsanto for $63 billion, and they set aside $16 billion for liability. Already in Missouri, judge has assessed a $265 million in damages when a farmer sued for his peach farm that had been dinged by dicamba. Then also a $400 million settlement, and then Texas grape growers are suing for a $560 million in damages. So there's monumental amounts of money that are coming out of Bayer's legal fund here, and it is not looking good. So let me tell you, if you're playing with Bayer right now, you better play by the rules, because they are bleeding cash and they will come to fucking get it. But I don't think this should be any surprise that if you fuck around with Bayer and you think that they won't fuck around with you back, then you are so naive. It's amazing to me that you would even attempt it, to be honest. It's one thing if you have a gallon or two laying around that ends up going out as part of your 250-gallon mix. But to be caught at this capacity, at this scale, when we're talking about 6,000 acres across which old chemistries and old seeds are being used, buddy, you might as well just bend over and show them your rectum and just beg them to hammer it home, because that is really what you're asking to have done.
Wow.
Well, the other part of this, though, too, is that, it talks a little bit about this in the article, but there's a lot of chatter, if you will, about Bayer doing a lot of this and policing this at a very, very psychopathic level almost, right? Where they're trying to hedge and say, listen, it's not us and our technology, right? It's these farmers that are going rogue that are causing these issues, right, with dicamba. So rather than let the government step in and say, oh, hey, like, clearly there's, some malfeasance here and people are using stuff off label or not the way they should be in terms of, some of the injury, the off target injury that we're seeing. Basically, Bayer is stepping in and saying, no, we're going to do that for you. And we're going to expose what's not right here, because it's not us. And you're not going to threaten basically our intellectual property, which is the technology to spray dicamba resistant crops, right? So I guess it's a little bit of, corporate protectionism, right, on their part. And it'll be interesting to see how much more of this, but, how they caught wind of this. It'd be interesting to really dive into the lawsuit and read it and try to figure out what is going on and how they're doing this. Basically, what are their, methods and means to collecting this information and monitoring it, right, over the course of, a growing system. What's that?
Very simple now, Ryan, because I'm familiar with the dicamba formulation that is legal for application to dicamba tolerant crops, and it has a name. It's called Ingenia. That is the product that is legal and labeled. However, I also know that for application to non-crop sites and pastures, you also have what's called 4 pound per gallon dimethylamine dicamba, and that is something that I've seen on the market for as low as $50 a gallon or less. Whereas the formulation that you're supposed to use is in the hundreds of dollars per gallon. And the difference is the amine salt used for the dicamba tolerant crops is an especially long chain amine that is supposedly less susceptible to volatility and drift. So what these guys basically did was they did the very thing that violated all the terms that enabled dicamba-tolerant crops and dicamba as a herbicide to even exist in the United States. So I do not blame Bayer's risk management team for going after these growers at all. And in fact, me personally, I would love to see actual product manufacturers take a more aggressive risk management stance regarding their various products. I welcome it.
I mean, who would you rather have on your duts? The government or Bayer? I don't know. Both of them are pretty frightening in my particular instance. Again, I'm just a spray jockey from nowhere that knows nothing. And let me tell you that Syngenta, Bayer, Monsanto, you mentioned any of those names, I am not going to fuck around and find out. I promise you that. Not once, not ever. That if there's ever a time to play by the book as squeaky clean as humanly possible, it's when you hear that kind of money out there guarding what is theirs. That's all. Oh, Lord have mercy.
Jack
we
McCoy
just get a little Jack McCoy.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. What's our next fucking article here?
Where am I? Here we go.
Safety standards.
Yeah,
tough one here.
Oh boy.
Hate to see this.
OSHA news release from Region 4. U.S. Department of Labor finds lawn service contractor ignored safety standards, allowed workers to operate riding mowers dangerously at Fort Campbell. $198,000 in penalties for willful, serious violations by Pride Industries. A federal workplace safety inspection of a lawn service contractor's operations at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, has found the company ignored safety requirements to save time, including removing safety guards on industrial mowers. Fuck. U.S. Department of Labor's OSHA determined Pride Industries, a Roseville, California contractor employed at the base, willfully allowed workers to operate zero-turn radius mowers without belt guards installed. What? OSHA inspectors identified serious violations as follows: exposing employees to potential lacerations and serious eye injuries by permitting workers to operate mowers with chute guards in a tied-up position, putting workers at risk of crushing injuries or death in a rollover by allowing employees to operate zero-turn mowers on slopes steeper than 15 degrees. Been there, done that. Exposing employees to potential lacerations by allowing unsafe operations of a bench grinder. Been there, done that. Allowing workers to operate a tractor without a cover on the power takeoff or PTO shaft. Been there, done that too. OSHA proposed $199,000 in penalties following its inspection on September 9th of 2022. Violations like these found in this inspection show the company's disregard for their workers' safety. Director William Cochran in Nashville, Tennessee. Their failure to follow established safety standards needlessly exposed workers to potentially dangerous and fatal hazards. 1966, Pride was established to provide employment for young adults with developmental disabilities. Oh, no.
Wait.
Yikes.
Oh,
Yikes.
No.
Yikes.
Well, they've got no. I think
really.
I think it's our mission. Hang on, I'm looking them up here real quick.
Wow.
Which is good. I commend them for that. But look, if ever there's a time to be a little tight on having your
safety
belt guards, having your belt guards on,
and your shaft guards.
Yeah, the PTO shaft guards, the bench grinder thing I can get. But if they're removing their rollover bars and stuff like that, especially if they're going to be on steep slopes, like, I mean, you gotta play by the rules a little bit better than that. Because I promise you, if they showed up and they just saw you fucking around on a bench grinder in an unsafe way, they're not going to freak the fuck out in the same they will with all of these going on, right? So, man, not a good look.
Yeah. And you know what also is not the good look? The good look is the fact that this is happening, and a lot of the employees are developmentally disabled. And what developmentally disabled means to me is these are like people with various stages of, say, Down syndrome. So they're intellectually challenged even. So if you have an intellectually challenged person and you have them working on a mower that is inherently less safe, and how many mower mishaps have we had on the burns? A lot.
There's a lot of them that we don't include that we have in our show notes, like our show prep, where it's like so and so died on a mower, and we're just like, oh man, with enough dark shit as we have on here, like we'll keep that one off. But if we did, every week we could have a mower death. Literally every week we could have one.
Or else somebody is maimed because the chute guard on the deck has been disabled and a stake or a rebar shot through that mower deck like a missile. I mean, right?
Oh,
I mean, I'm just thinking,
man. Yeah.
I mean, that just gives me the creeps to think that, okay, you have these people and they have their challenges, and then you're going to add a degree of danger to what they're doing by disabling the safety features on the mower. Because, you know, when I see
don't tie
guards
the deck up.
Yeah, and you know when I
make
see
contraptions for that.
Yeah, they make the OCDC, handles so you can, move that thing around as needed. And you know what? As far as the covers for like belts and gears and whatever, you know what, Matt? I love those those covers and guards. You know why? I've seen instances where a chain or a belt let go, and as a result of that belt or chain letting go, if that cover had not been in place, somebody could possibly be taking a piece of chain or belt right to their face because it would shoot.
Look, as a person who is an owner operator of a manufacturing facility, let me tell you, keep your fucking belt guards on, because all it takes is one. And if you've ever seen a belt fly off at 1800 RPMs, it is not a good time at all.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're sitting on top of the damn thing.
Shit.
The next one here is Pennsylvania officials say turf recycler is violating environmental laws. Oh boy. Turf recycler hit with an environmental violations as it works to open a Pennsylvania plant. In 2021, then Governor Tom Wolf announced that a Danish artificial turf recycler would be opening its first U.S. processing center in PA, providing a destination for ever accumulating piles of discarded sports fields. Oh, what is a turf recycler? No, we're talking about artificial turf. More than a year later, the processing center still hasn't opened. In fact, an official of Rush Township, Scheuchel County, is that how to say that? Can I?
Sure.
You're my PA resident here. Does that work? Scheuchel?
I don't know. Yeah, sure. Let's
I
go
don't
with
either. Scheuchel. Where the future plant is expected to operate, said the company hasn't yet gotten the municipal approvals needed for the government. Meanwhile, the artificial turf they one day hope to recycle has been waiting around stacked in sagging piles in Pennsylvania fields and parking lots. Wow. And the very same company that is in line to capture nearly $2 million in state incentives is also getting notices that it's violating the environmental laws. Oh, boy. Over the last few years, the PDEP, which we were talking about Florida's earlier, now we're at the PDEP, has identified infractions at 3 separate sites where Rematch was storing the turf. DEP officials haven't yet imposed any fines on Rematch for the violations and are working with the company on a plan to relocate the material for the location of its future processing center. Anyway, it goes on to talk about the challenges of dealing with this and why it's a particular issue. Because, well, it turns out those two are also full of harmful chemicals. It's just, you can't get away of it. And so open air storing it in fields and stuff is probably not the ideal thing to do. And if you go down and you look at pictures of it, you just see stacks and stacks of it that look like hay bales. But guess what? There's stacks and stacks of harmful chemicals instead of hay bales. So, by the way, cue up the PFAS speech, because this actually contains probably a metric shitload of PFAS too, and why it is inherently a bad idea to be stacking this up like they are.
Yeah.
Good job, boys.
There's a lot of this that's prevalent right now. You have some companies that are trying to get on the recycling train and do this. I think some of the larger manufacturers have started where they're taking old synthetic turf and grinding it up to make it into the shock absorbent pad that goes underneath some fields or playgrounds, things like that, and using it for some other stuff too. But there's no way, and I this is completely anecdotal. I don't have any evidence to back this up. I'm just going to say that there's absolutely no way that the capacity of any recycling system combined, right, within the country is set up to produce at scale what's coming in terms of waste in a given year right now. Like it's not possible. So I think the question is that, you still have a number of situations like this where it's just sent to a landfill, and that is what it is. And is that the best thing? So I don't know, Ray. I'm not sure what that would do for your property value, but probably wouldn't help.
No, it wouldn't help at all. And yet at the same time, here locally, almost every new athletic area is going to artificial turf. By default, it's just artificial turf. And the thing is that you raise a good question, because we don't even have enough landfill space in this state.
Yeah.
We ain't even got enough landfill space. So my question is with all of this zeal for putting in artificial turf, what is going to happen at the end of that turf's life? Because I know in the case of something like Bermuda grass, I would have a dispose of in sight plan that involves no removal of material and reestablishment of new turf.
Yeah.
But for artificial, you can't do that. You can't do that with artificial. No.
You're not seeing that. You're not seeing it anywhere, and it's unfortunate. And I wouldn't say anywhere. There are places that, again, it's become more prevalent, and it is a viable option in some of those cases. But there is definitely, again, a ceiling to that's very, very low right now. So take this with a grain of salt. But it's funny though that there's incentives given to these companies to go out and be part of the solution, everything like that. And for the time being, they're just like, you know what, we'll stack this up back here out in the back 40 and, until we can get this going. You know what I mean? It's like the pile of dried up cum-filled tissues under your bed when you're 12, 13 years old, right? It's not a problem until mom finds it. In this case, mom is the Pennsylvania State Department of Environmental Protection.
Environmental Department. So, yeah.
There we go.
Let's check out this week's returns.
Sorry, Mom.
Sorry, Mom.
Love you.
Love you too,
Sinner.
Mom. I'm back. Yes, I am. I want to start this off by saying, and I'm going to hold the visual that went on with this. So, I work in weird conditions sometimes, and I end up getting injuries. And one of them was that I had an infected pinky toe the other week. I can't remember what I hit my toe on, but I hit it on something, and it bled a little bit, and then it got infected. And I was at Home Depot, and I could not walk well, and I was like, you know what? Let's just go ahead and get rowdy. And I took a razor blade and I cut it and then drained it. Right. Since then it's been well. Well, I was picking the toenail on my pinky toe, and this is disgusting, while I was watching the Joe Knows Turf segment, and I have successfully removed the entire pinky toenail. It is completely gone, and I'm looking at it right here, and it's. Anyway, if you were wondering the anxiety level that I hit, I ripped off the entirety, and I'll save it until after the show and show our patrons. But it is my literal entire pinky toe nail is now off my foot, and I guess I am now a lesser man for it.
This guy's
to
a
the returns. That's
weirdo.
Where are we? While the glory days may be behind us, there is still a viable path to ensure universities are producing the next generation of superintendents. In Jared Diamond's Collapse, How Societies Choose to Fail or Succeed, the author examines ancient civilizations that flourished and then died out. The pattern that he observed was that ancient civilizations collapsed within about 10 years of reaching the peak of their economic and social power. The same pattern is eerily familiar to those of us who have been in the turfgrass research and education field long enough to have a gray hair. As a graduate student in turfgrass science at the University of Illinois, my advisors, Al Sargent and Dave Weiner, work closely with the golf course superintendents and other turf managers to raise money for research support through golf days, trade shows, and other events. Superintendents and others in the turf industry, including sod producers, landscapers, athletic field managers, contribute to the cause. Other agriculture groups, i.e. corn and soybean farmers, didn't appear to dig into their own pockets to support research. State support of agriculture programs largely funded these operations. After graduate school, went to Michigan State, where I met Gordon LaFontaine of the Michigan Turfgrass Foundation, which raised money to support turf research. LaFontaine was an exceptional businessman and fundraiser. MSU's turf program was and is generously supported by the annual fundraising, the MTF's significant endowment. When I returned to the University of Illinois in 1995, the Illinois Turfgrass Foundation provided similar support that funded research, also supporting work at Southern Illinois University, which then had a turf program. From approximately 90 to 2007, golf course construction boomed. Students came to large land-grant universities like Michigan State, Penn State, Ohio State, Purdue, Iowa State, North Carolina State, and others in record numbers. New turf faculty were hired, funding was flush, and the industry showed exceptional growth. From my viewpoint, the peak arrived in the early 2000s when turf majors at Iowa State reached a high of 143. However, with the Great Recession of 2008, everything went belly up, including enrollments in turf programs, where we've seen decline across the country. Iowa State's enrollment is now around 35 students. Even bigger drops have occurred at other land-grant universities. When enrollment at Illinois dropped to near zero in 2014, my department dropped our turfgrass course offerings, effectively shuttering the program. The University of Arizona ended their turf program in 2015. University of Kentucky paused in theirs around the same time. A multi-decade decline in state funding has also affected turfgrass programs at land-grant universities. State support has flipped completely from 40 years ago, with 85 to 90% of our budget coming from tuition and other revenues, and only about 10% from the state. Once truly public universities have become semi-private schools with budget decisions driven by tuition and research dollars. At the University of Illinois, tuition and fees have gone from $1,074.82 to over $18,000 a year in 2020. Throw in housing, meals, books, and you're up to $30,000 a year. That's like University of Tennessee or University of Georgia too. Where will future superintendents and other turf professionals be trained? As faculty with a turfgrass emphasis retire, they are not replaced. In the early 2000s, University of Illinois had 5 faculty focused on turfgrass research and education. Today, it's 1, soon to be none. On our campus, the rule of thumb is each faculty member should be supported by 30 undergraduates. By that metric, 2 to 3 turf faculty would require 60 to 90 undergraduate turf majors. But where do we go from here? Well, because of declining state funding, universities recruit more out-of-state and international students to generate tuition dollars and increase student quality by drawing from a larger pool of applicants. As an educator, I believe in the value of a 4-year degree. I've also encountered many excellent superintendents who graduated from 2-year degree programs. These programs offer good value since they are half as long and generally offer lower tuition. However, I've also noticed that many of our 4-year turf program graduates start in the golf course industry but later go into other related careers. A 4-year degree helps students more easily pursue advanced degrees that allow them professionally flexible. Many superintendents also work at private clubs where a 4-year degree may improve their perceived level of professionalism to members. How can we make the degree process more affordable? First, I would encourage interested students to attend community college to take care of general education requirements with the intent of transferring to a 4-year university. 2 years at community college can satisfy math, general sciences, and humanity courses required by most schools. Another alternative is a short course program such as those at Michigan State. Penn State, I know, has been working on that for a while. NC State and University of Massachusetts. These programs vary in length from 10 weeks to 2 years and offer students exposure to world-class faculty and facilities. Online programs are another one. Finally, cultivating more state and national scholarship programs for students who complete a 2-year degree would be ideal. Substantial scholarships of $5 to $10,000 would attract students to careers in turf management and encourage them to complete a specialized program. By making a dent in rising tuition expenses, universities can keep cultivating a diverse student body and talent pool. Then it goes on to research and putting it all together, and it's a lot, right? So
there's a lot,
yeah. And DeMay, I know this holds near and dear to your heart, and I think I try to play devil's advocate in this, in the standpoint that I do believe 100% that education is important. However, with the advent and acceleration of the internet, the beautiful thing about it, for me at least, is that I can learn the kinds of things I want to learn at the speed at which I want to learn them online, which is typically at hyper speed compared to what it would be in the classroom, with more attention applied to the details that are actually actionable, and with a higher degree of correlation of what I need out of the information that I gather. And I know with the strength of Ohio Turfgrass Foundation and Ohio State still having just one of the absolute most elite programs in the country, I think you offer the balance to what my take on it is. And so I want you to speak a little bit more about this, like with the decline and with hope of what's coming up in the future.
Whew, wow, it's a lot to put on the shoulders.
It is.
I agree with you. I mean, just from a personal standpoint, is I love education, but I've always hated school. That's a fact. I love learning, I love education, but I did not particularly care for school at any part. But it was a vehicle, and it was that for me. But it's not. I also saw many of my fellow students, going through first the 2-year program at Ohio State, and then the 4-year program later on at Ohio State, that I could tell it wasn't for them, right? And then teaching, and doing that, you see kind of the same thing. It's the same song and dance, that there are people that are cut out to be there, and that is the best thing for them, the best path for them to learn. And then you see other folks that maybe they're not ready yet for that kind of learning, knowledge transfer and that sort of thing, right? And I just think that it's got to become more individualistic, and I think that's where the internet has helped. I agree with that 100%. So there's two pieces. There's the enrollment piece, right? Of colleges need students to support professors who end up also doing research and extension and other things that help us out do our jobs better, right? And if we don't have those students, then we're kind of screwed. So there still needs to be that pipeline. There still needs to be that effort, that conscious effort, to get people that are college material, so to speak, into these programs, whether they're 2-year programs or 4-year programs, at these large institutions, and the ones that have continued to invest into turfgrass, like University of Tennessee, like Ohio State, Michigan State, and others, right? A lot of the land grants have done a really good job with that. There are a ton of folks, though, that do well in this industry that don't have a college education in it. And I think there's got to be a bridge built to getting those folks the education that they need, because simply just getting, we all know, and we would all agree 1,000% that just going and getting your license, passing that test, and then being thrown out there into the world is a far cry from being a well-trained and seasoned professional and somebody that knows how to handle situations. And I think that's the delineation. We've talked about labels and things like that of amateur, DIY, or whatever, but a professional is somebody who sees multiple ways, if there are multiple ways, of how to handle a situation, and also understands what failure looks like if they don't, or if they do, or some measure between those. Okay, so that all being said, is it's gonna be a tough road to hoe, I think, with the enrollment piece. I think one of the things that we see more and more, we hear a lot about, kids don't want to work these days, this, that, and the other thing. I think the more bad mouthing that we do of this industry, and I'll be the first one to say that it is a great industry. It can provide a wonderful lifestyle. It can provide an embarrassment of riches, not just money, but a variety of other things, right? If you're passionate about, working with your hands and doing stuff outside and seeing, the pride, of doing a good job and seeing something through to completion, there's a lot to be said to that. The parents, though, I would say, of younger kids, the parents are tough to get them to buy in. They see it as, like Matt said before, you're a lawn jockey, you're a grass stander, you're this, you're that, you're a ditch digger. It doesn't compute with them that there are guys that drive 15-year-old trucks, pulling what looks to be, half-assed equipment, that are making, in the mid 6 figures, no problem, every single year, right? and everything in between, to the most polished brand new trucks that, are making more or less or anything like that. So, land of opportunity there. They're talking a lot more about golf course folks here, which they have, a very clear path right now to earning a shit ton of money. We'll see. The part that really breaks, right. The part that really breaks my heart is the research part, because it is so vastly underfunded and it is so fucked up right now in terms of the way that it is approached by universities. And when I say that, I mean, if you were to give $1 million to any land-grant university right now, would you like to take a guess at how much the university will take as overhead out of that before those funds can be used for research? Take a guess on what the average would be.
I have no idea.
I want to say at least
of those
75 to 80%.
Most land grant universities are going to be somewhere between 45 and 65%, right off the top.
Well, I'm just speaking in terms of what I've actually seen as far as how funds get divvied up, and most of the money, unfortunately, goes to the bureaucrats.
Well, and so I think that's the bottom line, though, folks, is that with research, we've got to find a better way to support. And I think with that, it becomes, engaging with these folks more often, right? So if you are listening to us, and I don't care what state you're in, and if you're not sure of who the right people are to talk to, reach out to us and we'll connect you with them. But build those relationships. Build them so that you can connect with people that they might have to send you out for an internship, which is few and far between, much more different than what you see with this chart of what the enrollments were like 20 years ago. But you never know. You build those bridges, that can come back to you. Research ideas, extension ideas, call somebody for help. Having another voice, another resource that's close by that understands and talks to people in those states, that is the way that you're going to start being able to do this. And the last thing I'll say is this, is that there's a lot of people that have made a fuck ton of money in this business, right? And scholarships are important, don't get me wrong, but I think the research component is the one that's more underfunded at this point. And if there's anything that you're going to give your money back to that's going to help you do your job better, be more profitable, it is research. So that's a little foreshadowing on some of the stuff that the boys here and us we might get into here. Not that we're going to do any research, but raising money to support some of that stuff I think is important. As we try to be part of the solution and not bitching about the problems. So we'll see, boys. But man, near and dear to my heart, this industry it was built by people that thought the same way, acted the same way, acted accordingly. And I hope that we can do the same so that some other whippersnapper can get up here in 20 years and tell us what a bad job we did.
And it's. I just want to comment on this is that, you will hear, and you'll especially hear me say that people don't want to work anymore. And I say it very loudly. I think there's been Gen X is like the toughest of sorts of generations that I see. And then, you move into the millennials and then beyond, and it's on a downward decline. But I'll say this too, is that with ease of life, I think, what we see is a more and more existential crises that are occurring amongst our youth and just general angst, right? And the one thing that I can say about this industry is that anybody that's suffering from angst, depression, any sort of mental illness spectrum, is that the wonderful thing about this industry is that it provides a source to rectify that in multiple fronts. One, the exposure to the sun is going to be inherently good. Hands in the soil is inherently good. And both of those two things have been proven to be statistically more effective than antidepressants alone. And then you add the other component, the physical component of this work, and then the real time feedback on the fruits of your labor. Right? I mean, that is a quadrifecta of stimuli there. A trifecta. That's a quadfecta of positives that can help in that. Now, if you think that means you're going to be able to take just a junkie who's trending towards rock bottom and be able to flip them around in a week, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that if you can be a bit riskier with the types of people you bring into this industry, because once they get that taste, it's funny. I can't tell you how many people I know on the Furt and Squirt side of this business that substituted one addiction for another, and then grass became their addiction, and they built unbelievable careers for themselves like you would not believe. And I mean, 100% turn their life around. And I think a lot of it is that dual diagnosis aspect of them, treating one piece of whatever's going on, neurodivergently with what previously was either drugs or alcohol or whatever it is they did. And then this gave them something as an extreme positive, and that actually combats it in a multitude of different ways, and ends up turning people's lives around. So, I just want to put that piece out there too.
I can attest to that, Matt. I can totally attest to that because, 25 years ago, I decided that, you know what? I'm going to have a hard time mowing, trimming, or treating if I'm always so fucked up drunk from the day before. Serious. This is real talk. I decided, hey, I cannot be constantly shitbagged. And so conscious decision was made, hey, you know what? I'm going to get on the wagon, stay on the wagon, and then proceed to manage turf grass and landscapes with a high level of precision. And, and that's my life path, essentially. I don't think I would have that kind of motivation to change if I were doing some other kind of work. In fact, I could imagine myself not being around if I were in some other kind of work, because I wouldn't have a reason to get my shit together.
Well, and I mean, I don't know if if it has anything to do with it. I do think that there's that connection, right? Of like, you really can't take a day off, and I don't mean that
you
like,
can't
necessarily physically or mentally, but one of both, right? You've got to be locked in.
You got to
on this.
You got to be there. Yeah, and you also have to be physically present and not impaired. I mean, like, you cannot be. This is not like sitting in your cubicle with the Alka-Seltzer, asking yourself, "Oh, why the fuck did I do that last night?" This is not one of those kind of jobs. It's like you got to keep your shit together.
I've done that, and that's not fun.
Yeah.
Nope, just dumping some more of that Mancozeb at 14 pounds per gallon into your backpack sprayer and churning that shit up. Oh man, yeah. Maybe use a little stomach acid and vomit as your tank buffer. Whatever.
Yeah, as much anxiety as I carry around that I show on the air, if you could imagine what actually goes on in my head in real life, I promise you it's exponentially worse. And having something that keeps me insanely stimulated at all times is necessary for my personal health. And that's the beautiful thing about this industry, is that it keeps me grossly stimulated at all times. And I always said that the day I'd be done with this industry would be the day that I didn't learn anything new. And even though I'm on the manufacturing side of it right now, there's still not a day that goes by that I don't learn something new. And it gives me fodder and reason to continue charging on at the rate I do. All right, we're going to get out of here. We're going to turn this over to our patrons and let them choose the title of this week's episode. We love y'all. We'll see you on Thursday. Oh, wait. We had a mailbag. Wait, this is the one we were supposed to get to. We've got several in the mailbag. We're going to get to some of these on Thursday, but the one I did want to get to was Tyler K., who had a weed ID question here. And he sent us a general overview picture of the lawn, a close-up, and then when it's in its peak, and he wanted to know, what is this weed I'm looking at, or what he considers to be a weed. And he's wondering if it's bluegrass, because he treated the lawn with Fusilade 2 and it checked out brown for a month. And then he's wondering, is it a Kentucky bluegrass or is it a rough bluegrass? And so I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there that JPIC, if you don't mind, throw up the identification of the boat-shaped tip leaf there. Is the easiest way to identify that as Kentucky bluegrass. This is not a close-up enough picture for us to be able to make that determination, but if you see that, then you know. Then the second thing I'll tell you is that due to the darkness of this grass in these patches that you're looking at, I would bet a dime to a dozen that is not rough-stalk bluegrass. That is just a different variety of bluegrass that you're looking at. And that could be bluegrass in a tall fescue lawn, for instance. And a lot of times you'll see these seed blends that are 80% tall fescue, 20% Kentucky bluegrass. And this is the type of patterning that ends up happening over the years as it begins to establish, right? And so to me, I would say that this is Kentucky bluegrass in the midst of whatever seed blend had been applied as an overseed project. And it's just begin to patch out little by little until it's reached these types of patches. And so while it used to be a homogenized blend, now survival of the fittest and Darwinism is taken over, and that's where you're starting to see these patches begin to grow and accumulate in certain areas, and then other areas they're not. So that would be my best guess. Do y'all have anything different?
No, I agree 100% that. Go ahead.
That's what it looks like. Yeah. That's what it looks like to me too, is that you've got what's most likely Kentucky bluegrass. And this goes back to my caveat or warning to anybody that is contemplating fooling around with a fluazaflop application within their supposedly turf type tall fescue lawn. And that caveat is, if you have Kentucky bluegrass or ryegrass mixed in with that seed, and then you apply the label rate of fluazaflop to that area, your Kentucky blue and your ryegrass will dramatically check out.
It's going to get found. All right, now we're out of here. Love y'all. See y'all on Thursday. Bye.
Bye.